Welcome to Functionally Enlightened. Today, we're honored to have one of my mentors, Reed Davis, as our special guest. Reed is a board-certified holistic health practitioner and certified nutritional therapist, renowned for his expertise in functional lab testing and holistic lifestyle medicine. With having had over 10,000 clients and more than 20 years of experience, Reed is the founder of Functional Diagnostic Nutrition, FDN, and has trained over 4,000 graduates worldwide. He and I share a background rooted in environmental science, where his journey began as an environmental paralegal before he shifted his focus to understanding how environmental factors actually impact human health. Reed's dedication to helping others achieve optimal health led him to become an expert in functional lab assessments. He's also the co-author of The Gap: Simple Steps to Reclaim Your Health and Reverse Most Chronic Diseases, a groundbreaking book offering solutions for those struggling with chronic health issues. And many of our viewers today have approached me or have messaged me explaining of their chronic health issues, and they appreciate the resources that are being provided by people such as you. So thank you so much, Reed, for joining us today. And can you start off by telling us about your transition from environmental law into the wellness space?
Sure. Well, thanks so much, Sharon. It's really a pleasure to be here and talk about these subjects and to try to help as many people as possible. I've always been kind of a do-gooder, and before I was in the health space, I was in environmental law and conservation, trying to save the whole planet, air, birds, water, trees, bees. And, when you see enough dead fish and birds due to pollution, you start to wonder about people. So it was really a simple and natural organic progression. What about us? What about me? I didn't have any health problems at all, but I didn't want anything sneaking up on me either. So I simply changed jobs, and it was really easy because my son he was a all-star high school athlete, really all sports, and I had him taking really good care of his body at a wellness center in Southern California. And I started talking to the owners, and I just ended up going to work there, just switched jobs. And, I didn't know quite the path that I'd be on, but it turned out to be really interesting, a lot of fun, and very mission driven, a lot of helping people. So it was pretty easy transition. The skills I'd learned in law, big words, and how to simplify them, came in handy in the health field, because it's overwhelming the number of 6-syllable words there are, and it doesn't have to be that way. And so I don't know how much you want me to continue, but it was quite a journey for the next 10 years working in that clinic.
Yeah, so you do have a lot of experience, again, as you mentioned, with environmental conditions, environmental risks, probably mitigating the air quality and water quality. And so these things become very important when we're looking at individuals, and the individuals that have come to you and to me have been dealing with a lot of toxic overload. Can you explain your thought process on approaching a protocol or a treatment plan or?
Sure. Yeah, the first thing I learned working in that clinic, again, this is 25 years ago, just about, is that the body has pretty miraculous self-healing abilities. Matter of fact, it's been said in conventional medicine and alternative medicine, you name it, that no doctor's ever cured anything or anybody. The body either heals or it does not. And sometimes it heals quickly from small things. Sometimes it takes time to find out what's really wrong. And that became my job at the clinic. There was a lot of practitioners there, several, but mine was to run the lab work that would look at underlying causes and conditions with no ability whatsoever to diagnose or treat anything specifically. I could only work that way, and I got pretty good at it. So in the course of the next 10 years, I started, I was looking at all the underlying causes, all the conditions, all the lab work you could possibly run. We had a very game audience, if you will. The people coming in were caught in their cycles of trial and error and frustrated and were, willing to invest in themselves. So I got the honor and privilege of doing that. And obviously there's a lot more to health than just detoxification, but you have natural inborn abilities to detoxify what you're breathing, what you're drinking, the stuff that's in food, and you name it. So we're according to some interpretations, basically humans, especially if you live near a city, you're swimming, or what one doctor friend of mine calls it, marinating in a toxic soup. If you add up all the environmental stressors, everything from toxins, as you know, chemicals and herbicides, pesticides, and rodenticides, and everything's in the water, air, food stuff. That's a lot. There's also the electromagnetic frequencies and radiation, and from modern, machinery and technology. And even as I sit here, I should be wearing my blue blockers, to filter out those evil blue rays that come from our screens and things.
Mm-hmm.
It's okay. It's still before 2 o'clock in the afternoon. I'm safe. But so there's all of this environmental stress. Again, that was my foundation coming into it. But you start adding other stressors like mental emotional stress, psychospiritual stress, and how about physical trauma? I've had my share. All that adds up and causes chaos in the body, causes little ripples and downward spirals all over. They might be sort of seemingly insignificant at first, but they build up and they take their time working through your body, and they slow down or speed up or inappropriately throw things out of bounds. Now, eventually down the road, you get symptoms, which is where healthcare comes in, I guess. Most people go to the healthcare practitioner, doctors, when they feel bad. And physicians typically will get rid of the symptoms. That's kind of their job. It's what they're trained to do. It's not a bad thing. No one wants anyone else to suffer. But remember, I wasn't a physician, so I couldn't diagnose and treat a specific thing. I had to look at underlying causes and conditions. And obviously, the types of stressors that we just mentioned, including all those environmental nasties, have an effect. And you can end up with a congested liver, congested kidneys, dysfunctional immune system, slow lymph, and there's other detoxifying organs. Your skin is a major detoxifier. The colon is a detoxifier. The lungs detoxify. They exchange bad gas for good gas, carbon dioxide for oxygen. So we have all these built-in detoxification systems. And if they're working the way they're supposed to, and don't get exposed to too much garbage, then we should be okay. But we all know that a lot of us aren't okay, and a lot of these things have built up. So that's my overview on toxicity and detoxification. It's there, it's ubiquitous. It's, can you minimize it? And then can you keep your detoxification organs finely tuned, or as tuned as possible? And I have my stuff that I use, and not just lotions, potions, powders, or pills, but lots of things.
Yeah, and very specific things at that. That's one of the things that drew me into functional diagnostic nutrition. I'm very data driven, very analytical, and through my own chronic illness journey, there were so many things that it was trial and error all the way through. And it wasn't until, I guess, 2 years ago when I found, sort of, I guess, a couple of people that were FDNs. They would be speaking about the compilation of testing that is done as an FDN or within the practice. And it actually kind of came together, put all those missing pieces together. Can you tell our audience about those foundational labs that you guys have opted as your primary pillars of testing?
Sure. Well, we test, there's an acronym I use: hormone, immune, digestion, detoxification, energy production, nervous system. That spells hidden. And that was, remember, I spent 10 years in that clinic before I ever taught a single class or person. You know me as a teacher, educator with a program that I teach. But it didn't start out that way. I struggled to find the underlying causes and conditions, and the patterns that emerged over those years. They were became FDN, or functional diagnostic nutrition. I had to give it a name when I started teaching. Till then, I didn't have to name it. It's just what I did. Again, after 10 years, you learn a few things, hopefully. And I was good at codifying and organizing and putting it into usable language because I was the head educator at the clinic. I had to be able to tell Mrs. Smith or Mr. Jones or whomever and their kids and what was really going on in their bodies. And so we test we basically use saliva, urine, blood, and stool to get data from the body. And the important thing that I like to emphasize, Sharon, is how that data is your data. For all the listeners, you have data. Do you have your data? Do you have a copy of all the blood work your doctors run on you, even if he said nothing's wrong with you? It looks normal to me. Well, that's why we ran these alternative labs, the saliva, urine, stool, and things like that, looking for, well, what's really going on that maybe won't appear in the blood work until you're far down the road into a disease process. So these are sort of your early warning indicators of hormone imbalances. To answer your question specifically, hormone imbalances, not just the sex hormones, but your anabolic, catabolic hormones and things like melatonin. Those are hormones too. So hormones, the immune system, is it overactive? Is it underactive? If it's overactive, why? What's bothering it? Which would lead you to look for another test, pathology and things. But what happens when you have a lot of stress, and we covered the psychospiritual, mental, emotional, physical trauma, and chemical stress, we're under a lot of it. Your body, again, starts to break down. And one of the first things to go is your hormones. The catabolic, anabolic affect the sex hormones. So now your body's breaking down, you're aging too fast and before your time. And then the sex hormones go, you can have a lot of symptoms from that. And then, of course, your immune system goes, because with the cortisol and DHA, they affect the lining of the gut, the secretory IgA. You're very familiar with this. And so you know where I'm going. The body starts breaking down, you're aging before your time, your sex hormones go out, you have symptoms from that, whether it's just rough periods, the estrogen or progesterone, or early menopause, or infertility, or lots of things can occur. And then the immune system, you get a dysbiosis in the gut. And if you have a dysbiosis, you don't have enough good flora to break down your foods. And now you have digestive problems. And that can mean malnourishment, even if you're eating really good food. And it just kind of downward spirals from there. We start looking into mucosal barrier, leaky gut, and the pathologies that start in the gut and end up being throughout your whole system.
A couple of things you mentioned there. One of them was even the people that are eating very, very good diets. They're eating organic, grass-fed. Everything might be farm fresh, but there already are issues in the body. So we're not able to absorb those nutrients that we should be because of the other issues, other systemic problems. And a lot of our listeners have experienced like major traumas based on surgical procedures, or they've been diagnosed with a condition known as dysautonomia, where they either have orthostatic hypotension, POTS, mast cell activation. But being an FDN and learning, how to rebalance the body, for lack of a better phrase, it really doesn't matter about the diagnosis, because we have to kind of handle it in the same way to find those hidden stressors, as you said, and to rebalance those systems where we can, and always focus on perpetual detoxification, because we're going to be exposed on a daily basis. So one of the other things you mentioned was about getting a set of labs done and the results become the norm, or they're within the traditional ranges. Can you talk to us a little bit about how optimal ranges and traditional Western medicine ranges differ?
Oh, sure. So the traditional ranges are developed from a study of a population. And so let's just say that population wasn't very healthy. and you're getting all of these lab results, and they come up with a median, whereas half the people are above and half the people are below, and they go out as far as a number of standard deviations. So if you fall within that, you're normal. And so, but that could be not doing so well. And then you get into the diagnosed people who are above or below what's in the range. And that's not that good of a system, because you could be near the top or near the bottom and have a lot of dysfunction. You just haven't reached a threshold where medical decides that now you have a problem. Perfect example is something like blood sugar. The parameters for diabetes are really high blood sugar, high blood sugar, high blood sugar. You're starting to have insulin resistance, but you're not diabetic yet. And so the key phrase is yet. So you can sort of pass the test, even if you start looking at the A1C and things like that. Well, you're not diagnosable yet. Well, what about just being high in the range? Isn't that bad too? Yeah, that's bad too. So shouldn't you do something about it now? Why would you want to wait until you've crossed the medical threshold? And so that's the problem I have with the standard review. And that's why what they call functional ranges versus standard ranges are narrower. Especially with something like hemoglobin A1C, it's a lower threshold. One doctor might say, don't be above 7, you're fine. And, but no, actually you're borderline insulin resistant and diabetic. You just haven't got there yet. In other words, he can't prescribe medication yet. And so we'd want to catch you before the medication is called in, when you can control your diet and get your pancreas and insulin production in order and stabilize it. And there's all kinds of things you can do. Matter of fact, I don't have a short sleeve shirt. I happen to be wearing my constant glucose monitor right now. Mm-hmm. And I don't have my phone handy either, or I'd show you, I can track my blood sugar. So I don't want to become pre-diabetic or diabetic. So that's the problem with standard ranges, is they wait too long to tell you there's a problem.
Mm-hmm. And then at that point, they're able to prescribe a pharmaceutical. Pharmaceutical might, like you mentioned earlier, alleviate some of those symptoms, but it also comes with a slew of side effects. And then you don't know what's causing what at a certain point.
Right. Yeah, they'll monitor you and tell you you're fine until that you need them. And that's not the way we do business. Right. Our business is to help you live the most joyful, longest, we say more life in the years, not just years in the life. And I'm happy to say I'm 70, doing good. I have a 94-year-old mother. I just flew all the way to Florida and back for Mother's Day because I didn't want her to be alone for her 94th, Mother's Day at 94 is different than it was at 64, let me tell you. But for her, but all good. Anyway, you want longevity and you want quality, and you better start looking at those numbers earlier than wait until someone says, oh yeah, now you need this prescription or that prescription. And as you mentioned, side effects can be worse than the disease.
Mm-hmm. As was my case. I eventually came off of pharmaceuticals completely, with the exception of one that I take for a prolactinoma, which is a benign pituitary adenoma. So that kind of goes into the HPA axis. That's something I wanted to ask you. Okay. I know in your course, you do talk a lot about the HPA axis, and you talk about the production of hormones in the body, where it starts, the precursors. And so a lot of our audience might not be aware of some of the things that we need to be mindful of, for instance. And it's kind of controversial when we bring up cholesterol. Like, a lot of people get prescribed statins because of high cholesterol. And it's not necessarily an issue when, I don't know if you want to dive into some of the specifics on cholesterol, or just go into how the HPA axis should be functioning.
Sure. Let's start with the general idea, the umbrella view that stress can cause dysfunction. And your what manages stress for you is your hypothalamus, the pituitary in the brain, and the adrenals, which are attached to your kidneys. So in the adrenals is where cortisol is produced. It helps us manage stress. It helps us manage the fight flight mechanism. I'd rather talk about that than cholesterol, because cholesterol is a nasty business. And there's so much misunderstood. I could just pause there for a minute and say, what you want to focus on is having high, good cholesterol. Not worry so much about lowering is medication to lower your quote unquote bad cholesterol, which isn't even bad. Is that the answer? Or is diet and exercise and stress reduction and things like that the answer? Well, I think the latter, not just taking pills, because you can. If there was no pills to lower cholesterol, it wouldn't be a problem, it wouldn't be considered a problem. So once you have a medication for something, then you can label it as a problem and start selling a lot of pharmaceuticals. So we don't work that way. We help people raise their high cholesterol, which is the right way to clear out the so-called bad cholesterol. And but now getting back to stress and this idea of the hypothalamus, pituitary, adrenals, this is one of the key areas to understand. We're built to handle some stress. The fight flight is a natural thing. It comes from maybe the old days where you might have to fight your neighbors or a bear or something like that. So fight flight's natural. The stimulation, the adrenaline, the cortisol, and these things make you stronger, faster. They dilate your eye. You can respond to stress better, and that's normal. And yet it should go down. You should have the episode of stress, and then there's stress response, which is natural, and then there's stress resolution. You resolve that problem, it's gone away. So everyone knows that what it's like to be cut off in traffic. Someone goes in your lane, and what happens? Your adrenaline pumps immediately. There's an immediate adrenaline rush, and then your heart, and then the cortisol kicks in with a few minutes. Your heart's racing. It goes faster. Things happen to respond to that stress, and then your heart rate slows down. Your breathing slows down, and you feel better once you're out of trouble. That's how it's supposed to work. That's a normal stress response. Problem is today we have ubiquitous stress, and you don't even know that you're being stressed with some of it. You have a job you don't like going to, and there's people there that bother you, and that's why you don't like. And even getting there, like I said, the traffic, and you're at your job, and you're not really fulfilling any purpose. You feel existential angst, like you're not doing anything with your life, and all these things will raise your cortisol and create a cortisol to DHEA imbalance, and your body will start breaking down. It's no different. Having a boss sort of yell at you or make you do something you don't want to do, your body responds the same as if they slapped you in the face. As a matter of fact, I'd rather have a slap in the face because I know how to deal with that. Hit back harder. But I'm kidding, not really. But you and the same thing with a chemical assault. If you drive past a chemical plant and you go, ooh, phew, and it will do the same thing, raise cortisol, throw you out of balance for a while. And so all these things are constant. We have the TV on. We have things in our food that are stressing us out. The chemicals in food, again, the herbicides, rodenticides, and insecticides. And if you eat non-organic food, it's hard to avoid. You're going to have a lot of stressors. And with me, it's aches and pains from old sports injuries. I did kickboxing and jujitsu. I did skiing. I did surfing. I've done a lot of things to damage my body, a few motorcycle accidents. And so I'm in pain from some of those, if you don't get it taken care of. So you have all this pain and stuff. And so what handles it is that HPA, the hypothalamus adrenal, hypothalamus pituitary adrenal, the HPA axis. And it gets tired of that stuff. It gets non-responsive. You start to get resistance. The negative feedback loops stop operating. And guess what? Now you're just in that fight flight all the time. And you know people like this that are just they're just seem to live in fight flight, and they're jumpy, and they bother people like me, who is very parasympathetic dominant. I'm a naturally laid back person, and so I can tell when someone's in fight flight. This doesn't mean I don't get there. I come down really quickly, and have trained myself to come down quickly.
Right. And that's where we all want to be able to balance that fight or flight and get back into parasympathetic pretty quickly, unless the emergency is ongoing.
Exactly. So, if you're running out of a burning building, it's good to be in fight flight. You got extra strength, and you've heard about moms turning over cars that their kid was trapped under, stuff like that. That's all true. And that's how it's supposed to be. But you're supposed to come down and be able to relax and enjoy your food and digest your food properly, which you can't do when you're in fight flight. And things like resting, really deep rest, and procreation comes out of that, a parasympathetic way. And so it's good to have balance, right? We want balance.
Right. And many people don't understand that if you stay in that sympathetic mode, and what can be happening is that you mentioned the mental emotional component of it. That's a major piece. It's a piece that I overlooked for so many years. And that's what kept the ruminating thoughts kept me in that sympathetic mode. And that impacted sleep, it impacted digestion, and all of the latter. So when we're looking at the FDN methodologies, and we know that there is a protocol that you teach on, the Dress for Health Success. Can you tell our audience what that entails?
Sure. And I always like to give a little overview. So when I was in the office in the beginning, I had a lot to learn. I had nothing to unlearn. I hadn't been indoctrinated into anything. I'd studied a little bit of Eastern medicine and some Native American Indian medicine, and experimented with some things. But otherwise, I was just open to really investigating. And one of the first things I noticed about the people coming in the office, not only were they caught in this cycle of trial and error, going from one practitioner to the next, but most of them had some pretty bad habits. And so once we got them coming in the office for their treatments and things, whether it was chiropractic or acupuncture and massage and lots of modalities, and we had medical oversight there, of course, but I would say, hey, you're coming in the office 3 times a week, Mrs. Smith. What are you doing at home every day on your days off, so to speak? And what do you mean? And so I started really looking into the habits that people want to have if they want to not have to come in the office. It's like, it's great you're coming in, but you don't have, if you would do this, and this. So those things became our DRESS, diet. What are you eating? We eat, that's one of the most influential epigenetic factors there is. In other words, the expression of genes happens from the epigenetics, how you live. And diet is almost the number one. It probably is the number one, because you can control your diet. You can eat according to your genetics and metabolic type. And so rest is the next one, DRESS, diet, rest, which is more than just sleep. It's really knowing how to rest your sympathetic nervous system, shut off and go to a nap or whatever it might take. Rest your emotions and your spirit as well as your body. And it's more than just sleeping. So diet, rest. E is exercise, obviously, and you can't be healthy if you don't exercise. Sitting is the new smoking, and everyone knows all this. But it can't be the same for everybody. All of these things need to be individualized by the lab work. And so diet, rest, exercise. I'm 70. I can't do what I did at 25 years old. My body won't stand up. And actually, I've been injured because of the type of over-exercise that I used to do. And so it's got to be customized. Now, DRE, diet, rest, exercise. The 2 S's are stress reduction, which is a whole podcast in itself, and supplementation, another whole podcast. But I could give a quick overview of stress reduction is finding out what are all the exterior stressors the people and places and things that stress you out, the environments that stress you out, and of course the internal stressors. We look for parasites, bacteria, funguses, viruses. There are signs of and tests for other types of internal stressors. So diet, rest, exercise, stress reduction comes in many forms, and then supplementation. We have the 4 S's of supplementation. And that is, first of all, substituting from what's missing in food. Food just isn't the quality. The soils have been depleted. So you need more vitamins, minerals, essential fatty acids, trace elements, phytonutrients, antioxidants. You need more than what's in food. So you got to supplement. So that's substitution for what's missing. Then there's support. You get weak areas. You get weak digestion. You get weak, whatever it might be, adrenal glands. You get weak adrenal glands. So you want to support those. So you have substitution, support. And then if you're traveling, like I have to, stimulation of the immune system, for instance. You can stimulate certain areas. And then the last S after substitution, support, and stimulation is self-treatment. So if you do have a bug, yeah, you probably want to go get checked out by a doctor, but you might not want to take their recommendations unless you got a really bad situation. So you can self-treat. There are lots of things to get rid of parasites and bacteria and funguses that are natural, that don't have the same side effects. They're not as toxic, and they're appropriate much of the time, maybe not all the time. And that's why we integrate well with physicians who can diagnose really serious bugs. You know, if you come back from West Africa with a temperature of 105 and your eyes are bleeding, that's the Ebola virus, and you wouldn't call your FDN practitioner. You'd go straight to emergency and get that taken care of. You know, so some are so virulent, you need the intervention. But for the milder ones, treat that yourself.
Mm-hmm. And with FDN, again, we're giving people back the empowerment, like they're empowered to take on the self-treatment, but it's not just taking blindly. They're not just given a supplement for a cause or for a symptom. I think that the beautiful piece about it is that they're getting the education. They're understanding what are the imbalances. They're understanding, yeah, if they have specific markers showing up. Leaky gut is just a term, everyone understands it, but you can actually see it in your labs. And again, that's the beauty of it. You can see it, you can understand it. Again, with the recommendations that are made in the Dress for Health Success, you understand what each component is for. And so the individual can either decide to take it on wholeheartedly, step into it slowly and just see like slower progress, or decide not to do it at all and continue with whatever methods they were using in the past. So that's, I think, another thing of FDN.
You just brought up the third component. The first one is look for the hidden stressors and dysfunctions and areas that need improvement. So what needs fixing? Next is what do you do about it, which is the dress program. The third part is actually running the program, which is where health coaching comes in. And not all FDNs are health coaches, but health coaches all need to be FDNs so they can understand what's wrong and how to fix it. But there is a process of working together where you get supported and nurtured in your journey to overcome what might be years of torment and aggravation and experiments and things like that. I mean, people come to us having seen 10, they've already been to 10 people. And back in the day, I said, I'm not going to be number 9 out of 14. I'm going to be the last person. I was naive at the time, but I spent the next 10 years running thousands of labs on thousands of people and came up with something that has very reasonable expectations. And we don't overpromise, but we deliver and outperform most other methods. Again, unless you really need that doctor, if you're seeing doctors for all your problems, your ladder's on the wrong wall. The problem is you and your lifestyle, and you need the data that's actionable, and it's your data. So back in the hands of the people to be responsible for themselves and their families.
And they can take on, I know a lot of the clients that I work with, they have taken on themselves a mentorship to people around them. So it's kind of exponential. I mean, they might not have the training, but at least they can provide people with a little bit of direction, who to go to, what are some of
Sure.
the things they should be looking at. And I guess to throw it back to you, if you had a couple of things that you would suggest to someone who might be experiencing a chronic illness, and before they would really dive into the labs, diagnostics, what would you recommend that they start with?
Well, sometimes it's okay to go get checked out by your physician, but if they say nothing's wrong with you and you know there is, there is. And that's when you'd go to an FDN practitioner who would run additional labs. And remember, we use the functional ranges, not just the diagnostic ranges. So, and we do a lot of inquiry into the person and what's really going on with them. So, but to your point before that, I just wanted to say, with like moms and their kids, kids don't like going to the doctor, and generally you don't want to be giving them drugs anyway, for the most part. So, moms can do a really good job of taking responsibility for their whole family by getting the education, doing the work on themselves. And I'll give you a quick example. I had a lady come in the office. She was doing wonderfully, and she said, just sort of, but on the way out the door one day, hey, do you work with kids? And I said, yes, sort of, like, why? She goes, because they want to put my son on drugs. And they're going to kick him out of school if I don't put him on Ritalin. Ritalin was the drug of the day back then. And Ritalin, by the way, that's a class 2 narcotic, the same category of narcotics as cocaine. So cocaine and Ritalin are the same category. And I said glibly, well, do you think he has a Ritalin deficiency? And which I thought was funny. And she didn't think it was funny at all. She goes, no, and I don't want to put him on drugs. And can you help him or not? And I said, hey, I don't know, but if you let me do some testing, maybe, like I can't promise. And yet we ran some tests, changed this young man. By the way, he was 9. Imagine putting a 9 on a class 2 narcotic on purpose, and 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 by the way, when I also asked her, what do you mean they said he needs to be on drugs? Is that a doctor working at the school or a school nurse? No, the teacher and principal conspired to diagnose the
Mm-mm.
person, a 9-year-old. Anyway, we ran some labs, changed his diet, changed his bedtime, changed his homework schedule, and changed his exercise schedule. Lifestyle medicine. And within 3 weeks, I got a call from the principal who tracked me down. And he said, Mr. Davis, I got your number from Mrs. So-and-so. And this Billy, call him, he's a new kid. He's paying attention. He doesn't jump up out of his seat and bother the other kids and outburst and all these things. And this is, of course, making me feel really warm and fuzzy until he said, what'd you put him on? And then it's like, oh, sir, you don't know how we work. We put them on a better sleep, homework, exercise, and diet. That's what we put them on. All done by the mom. I never even saw the young man. He never came in the office. This was all done through, here's the test kits, take them home, do them on your kid yourself. So I put her in charge of him, and he turned out really wonderfully. And I have so many stories like that. They're very heartwarming, and it's why we do what we do, right?
Absolutely. I have my own 8-year-old, and a similar thing, like his behavior was a little bit challenging for a certain period of time. And the diet, I think, was the critical step, like making sure to eliminate all those dyes, preservatives, and food colorings made such a drastic change. His sleep was pretty good already. I worked through the system, and we got it addressed. And
Yeah.
it's a drastic change. People can see it, but if they just implement something consistently, it can't just be something that you do for a period of 2 or 3 weeks or even 2 or 3 months. It has to be a lifestyle, like you said. I appreciate the
Right.
insight on that.
Yeah, it's just, again, very heartwarming and rewarding, and it's why we do what we do. And changing the world, you got to do it one person at a time, I guess.
Yes, yes, absolutely. If people want to reach out and learn first a little bit more about your
Okay.
course, the functional diagnostic nutrition, or if they want to reach out to an FDN, how would they do that?
So, well, you're an FDN, they could reach out to you,
Absolutely.
but we have a special URL for this show. It's fdntraining.com/Sharon Sarita. And just go there and we'll give you something for free to uh, see if it turns you on at all. You know, if you want to be educated, we have lots of education. But otherwise, there's a directory on there for FDNs if they want to be on it, and some do and some don't. We have over 1,000 members of our alumni group. I've trained 4,000 people. We have a professional organization of FDN practitioners, over 1,000 strong. And so, there's lots of FDNs around. Some of them work for doctors, some of them work for themselves, health entrepreneurs, have their own practices, in which case they get to pick their own hours and prices and geography, because you can do it from anywhere. And So your listeners should go to fdntraining.com/Sharon Sarita.
We appreciate that. I'll make sure to include that in the show notes. And
Okay.
Reed, thank you once again. I appreciate all of your insight. I know that there's so many people that are starving for the information, so we appreciate you sharing that.
Yeah, fantastic. I want to thank you too for the amazing work you're doing. And you have found a niche that's very, very important and much misunderstood, especially by modern medicine. You can't just drug your way out of some of these things. You've got to work on yourself and
Me.
becoming more self-aware and getting the labs, getting that your own data into your own hands is very, very powerful. So thank you for everything you're doing, because you're completing the mission that I started. Like I knew I could only see so many people, but if I trained others, then guess how many people we could help them, and you are doing that. So good on you.
Thank you. We'll continue to spread that out there so that we can get all the people into the optimal health. So thanks again, Reed, and thank you to all of our listeners. We appreciate it, and we'll see you on the next one. Take care.